Hello everyone and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily. Today we're going to be talking about lore, but just before we get into it, I wanted to let you all know something. I've had a lot of comments, and I really do mean a lot of comments, from people asking me when it comes to these lore videos, whether eventually I'll do a summary video, some kind of a summary of all of the lore that exists in Guild Wars 1 to date, so that a lot of you guys who didn't play the first game, but are interested in the lore and would like to know more, can have something to watch to get you introduced to the world. A few people have tried to do something like that before, but I often find that they miss out some of the more interesting, some of the more awesome things. So I'm actually going to be producing 3 video series at some point in the near future that's going to be going over all of that stuff. So for you guys who are asking, those of you who actually want to see this, yes, that's a very big yes. I am working on it, but I really want to make sure it's very good and I want to take my time with it. So it may be a few weeks before it comes out. I've got some help from a fantastic artist who's going to be working with me on the project as it goes forward. I guess I'll give you guys a few little updates as we work closer to it, but yeah, it's something I'm working on and it should be out sometime in the near future. So yeah, there's that. Right, the first question comes in from Gabareko2. I believe this person asked something before already, but it's a question that I've seen a couple of people asking, which is pretty much, is there any justification for why the dragons are attacking the way they are? Why are they going nuts and trying to destroy the planet and making life miserable for all the races that already exist there? And the answer to this question is quite a disappointing one to me, considering that all of the storyline of Guild Wars 2 revolves around these dragons. So yeah, it's very natural to ask, hey, what's their motivation? Why are they doing this? Because at the end of the day, it's their motivation, it's their reasons for doing this, their reasons for all the story essentially that Guild Wars 2 is going to be offering, that will decide whether we're really going to be experiencing a particularly deep or compelling story here. And the answer, sadly, is that they're just evil, pretty much. It's a bit of a cop-out. They have been described, the Elder Dragons have been described as powerful, hungry, elemental forces that don't necessarily think, they just do. They are just hungry for destruction. They are hungry for power. And the more they feed, the more powerful they gain, the more destruction they bring to the planet, the more hungry they become. And this is kind of all we've really heard of their motivations for why they're doing it. It does go a little bit deeper than that. There are more things we know about the Elder Dragons. Like, for example, we've heard that this is essentially a cycle. So the earliest things we really knew about before all the Guild Wars 2 lore started coming about that existed in the Guild Wars universe on Tyria were these things called the True Giants. They've got a more technical name, but I always butcher it, so I'm not going to go there. But these True Giants, okay, think of them essentially as dinosaurs of Tyria. These are very ancient beasts, massive giant beasts that roam the land thousands upon thousands of years ago, long before the gods came and brought the humans, and long before many of the races that we know as ancient races, such as the Char, seem to have even existed. This is a very, very long time ago. And all that remains of the True Giants in today's Tyria are their bones littering the landscape. You can go to certain places in Guild Wars 1, like these specific tar pits, or certain forgotten places in the corners of the world, like the Crystal Desert, and you'll find these huge carcasses, these massive bones. We really don't know much about the True Giants aside from that, except that they all existed, and at some point they were destroyed. They became extinct. There have been hints at other races that are still very much alive in Guild Wars 2, like the Jotun, that maybe they had connections to those True Giants a long time ago, but nothing's been set in stone. We just know that they became extinct. We've also had lore that suggests that the Elder Dragons wake up, they are hungry for power, they destroy everything in sight, potentially wipe out all life on the planet. This serious, they might wipe out all life on the planet and then fall asleep, and then a long time later they reawaken and the cycle continues. And you can kind of put these two facts together and assume that the last time the Elder Dragons were awake, these native elemental forces to Tyria, the, if anything, most true things to Tyria we know of in Guild Wars, woke up, they destroyed the True Giants and then fell asleep once more. We do know, though, that some of these ancient races that we know of in Guild Wars 2, such as the Dwarves, who are extinct but are still around, actually have legends and knowledge about the Elder Dragons, which does kind of suggest that maybe they were alive back then. And who knows, when we get in game, we may find out that we have to contact the remaining Dwarves that exist within Tyria to find out how we can combat the Elder Dragons this time. But aside from that, we don't know why they have this motivation. I think it is a crying shame. I really do, because I think a good, compelling story, you have to be able to understand where the villain's coming from. Granted, the Elder Dragons aren't the only villain that exists in Tyria, and they're not the only facet of the Guild Wars 2 storyline. There's a lot going on there. This is a big universe that's been invented. But for the main target, the main drive for why we're playing Guild Wars 2, the big boss at the end, I do feel like that's a bit of a shallow plot. I feel like maybe ArenaNet could have tried something else. But maybe it could simply be the fact that there is a more compelling story here that we just haven't heard so far. We're being told that they're hungry, powerful forces, but when we actually get in game, it could be kind of blown open and we'll find out that there's a whole lot more going on here. Maybe when we finally defeat Zhaitan at the end of Guild Wars 2, we will learn some massive revelation that describes the movements of the other dragons and why they've been doing it. And hey, you know, in a bizarre twist of events, we might find something so interesting that in one of the future expansions, we find that one of these Elder Dragons isn't necessarily even against us. In fact, the Elder Dragons themselves don't necessarily work with one another. This is how little they think. Their champions themselves do seem to think. They can command armies and stuff. But the actual dragons themselves, these forces, don't necessarily think. And this is to the extent where one dragon, Kralkatorrik, might not necessarily get along with one other dragon, Zhaitan. And if the conditions were right, these two Elder Dragons could be fighting one another. Which also leads to some very interesting speculations about where they could go with expansions in the game or various things like this. I'm sure we all think the idea of two of these Elder Dragons fighting one another while we come in and storm the party is a very, very cool idea. I like it anyway. It might be a little bit cliche, but I do think it would be a cool way to end one of the expansions. So yeah, at the moment we don't know much. They're just powerful, hungry forces, and that's all anyone can really say on the topic at the moment. The next question comes in from Futurama Boy 3000, who says, do you know more about the lands in Tyria you couldn't explore in Guild Wars 1? Like, for example, the Isles of Janthir and that piece of land above Kryta. So, the Isle of Janthir, this is really, really interesting. Recently, ArenaNet updated the in-game map that existed within Guild Wars 2. So, for a long time, we had the demos, people would go there, they'd take video footage of it, and we'd come back and discuss what we saw. And it was always this old map that they used to use. However, with the press beta, that's actually been changed from now on to a much more stylized, much more colourful new map, which is very, very cool. It looks very pretty and very nice. But the best thing about this new map is it's got marked on there every single region in Tyria, including regions that won't be accessible at the game's launch. So, for Guild Wars 2, when it does launch, there are a handful of regions we can go to. We can go to the Shiver Peaks, we can go to Ascalon, we can go to Kryta, we can go to the Tarnished Coast, and to an extent the Maguma. It doesn't look like too deep into the Maguma Wastes, but we can go there. And we can go to Ore. There are some certain places that we can go to. However, in Guild Wars 1, there were some other places that we could go to that aren't actually there available in Guild Wars 2's launch, such as the Crystal Desert. This is one of them. So you can look on the map and you can see this big desert down in the bottom right hand corner called the Crystal Desert, which we have a lot of lore about and we know a lot about thanks to Guild Wars 1, but in Guild Wars 2's launch we can't go there. Another such area is the Fire Island Chain, also marked on the map, but we won't be able to go there despite the fact we could in Guild Wars 1. Even better than this is that there are places marked on the map that we couldn't go to in Guild Wars 1 or 2, but have been named. So what happened with Guild Wars 1 was, when the first expansion came out, the true expansion, Eye of the North, when that came out, ArenaNet for Guild Wars 1 updated the map and pretty much doubled it in height. So for Guild Wars 1, we could see a lot of the stuff in the Northlands that we could never access, but didn't have names. It was just kind of there and we didn't know very much. However, with this new map in Guild Wars 2, these places, despite still we won't be able to access them, have got their names, which is very, very interesting. One in particular is called the Isle of Janthir. This is the one I really want to talk about because this is the one we can speculate most on, thanks to things we found out in Kryta in the first game. So the Isles of Janthir are referring to a series of islands that are out in a northern ocean that look very similar actually to the Fire Island chain, which we could explore in Guild Wars 1. They look very similar to that. They look like volcanic, desolate islands, very black rock up there. That's kind of what they look like. There are other islands dotted around that look like they possibly could be forested, and we're not sure if the Isles of Janthir is in reference to those as well, or simply just the volcanic looking ones a bit higher up. But it gets interesting when you hear the word Janthir. These Isles of Janthir were referenced in Guild Wars 1. The story of Kryta in the first game was essentially that a new power, the White Mantle, had risen, and they began to oppress people, and they began to worship a race of very powerful spellcasters and treated them like gods, despite the fact they weren't. These were just an ancient race that existed in Tyria a long time ago, called the Masat, which I mentioned in another daily video the other day. Now, a part of the White Mantle rituals to worship the Masat and give the Masat humans to sacrifice sacrifice involved them using an artifact they called the Eye of Janthir. This was this giant pulsing pyramid eye that would follow people around, and this artifact had the ability to discern which humans had special powers that could essentially mean those humans might one day rise up and kill the Messart. So the Messart were manipulating the Crichtons to use this eye to identify who could possibly fight them and then sacrifice these humans in due time. So this artifact is a very ancient, very powerful thing that came from a time possibly when the Elder Dragons used to reign over Tyria. But the best thing is it was called the Eye of Janthir, which suggests it came from a place called Janthir. There was also a very small throwaway line from a specific NPC or a tablet somewhere in Krypton. It only occurred once in all of Guild Wars 1. There was just one reference to it, but it mentioned an island to the south of Krypton called the Isles of Janthir. So we knew it existed, and this isle was hinted at being the home of the Messart. So with this new map, we can now see that there are these Isles of Janthir. They're no longer to the south, as the White Mantle were telling people, they're to the north. So what could that mean? In Guild Wars 1, we also found out that the Messart existed, at least for a long time, on a volcanic island chain. So it could make a lot of sense that their true home was also on a very volcanic island chain, albeit thousands and thousands of miles to the north. So yeah, really, really cool. I love that there's this idea that the Isle of Janthir do actually still exist in lore, because this was such a little throwaway line to something about the Messart, who still to this day are a very mysterious race within the universe that was established in Guild Wars 1, and ArenaNet apparently are still thinking about this lore, and they've developed it further. There is an island there called this. What does this mean? This could mean that in an expansion we will learn about the origins of the Messart, this mysterious race we met all that time ago back at the original launch of the Guild Wars franchise. We could learn more about them. That might be in ArenaNet's plans. They've dedicated a region to these people. There's more story there. It's one of those amazing little things that has appeared as a small reference somewhere and now is actually being expanded on. Okay guys, I did have a third question about the Staff of the Mist, but I think I've talked long enough. We'll do that next time. Thanks very much for watching, and yeah, do look out for that summary video. I'm going to be doing a series about it to introduce you all to the world and let you know the things you need to know. It will be coming, so don't worry about it. Thanks very much, and I will see you tomorrow.